When you are scanning a target, you don't want to be caught. Let's see what we can do to fly below the radar of an intrusion detection system. We're going to use Server 2016 and Kali, and you need to download a free trial copy of KF Sensor Professional and put it on Server 2016. And I'm going to show you how to bypass the wizard. Then we'll go to Kali, and we're going to test the IDS with various Nmap commands. We're going to first just do an Nmap against Server 2016's IP, which is normal speed, timing 3, T3, and that does the 1,000 most popular ports. Then we're going to, and it's a SYN scan, so it's a TAC-S, CAP-S. We're then going to do a full TCP connect scan and hope that the IDS thinks that that's normal and does not log that. Then we're going to try to fragment at normal speed. Then we're going to go to the slowest speed with a TCP full connect, and because it will be really slow, it'll take about 2 minutes just to do 4 ports, we're just going to do a few select ports. Then we're going to try to speed it up a little bit. As you might recall, Nmap has various speed levels. T1, T meaning timing, that doesn't mean like network bandwidth. So T1 is paranoid, the very slowest, up to T5, which is insanely fast, so fast that you might destabilize Nmap. We're going to try these various things and see what the sensor does and does not detect. Hopefully we'll be able to find something that flies below the IDS. Here's my Server 2016, and I have copied KF Sensor. Let me double click it, and let me just do a default install. I'm clicking Next, I accept the terms, click Next, Next, Install, and then in a moment finish. Now when the console starts, there's a setup wizard, and it would take you through some stuff. In our case, we don't need it. Go ahead and click Cancel and click OK. And what you're looking at here now is the KF Sensor console, and KF Sensor is both an IDS and a honeypot. And what you can see here is that by default, it will listen on a variety of ports from port 1 all the way down to port 8088 in TCP, and then in UDP select ports up to 3702. And it will look for ICMP and Windows connections. You'll notice that some of these are things that you're not running on Server 2016, like NNTP. You're not running that, and you're not running maybe SOCKS, probably not, and you may or may not be running SQL, I don't remember. You may or may not be running terminal services and other things. The ones that you're not running are honeypot ports. KF Sensor is going to present them as if you are running them to see if it can capture Nmap trying to scan it. You'll also notice that some of them have a line drawn through them. That is because KF Sensor has discovered that you are actually running those ports. It will monitor them, but it won't send out a fake honeypot reply. It won't interfere with that, but it will monitor for things like scanning. That's why we see these various selections here. You can play with this later, and you can add other ports and things like that. That's beyond the scope of what we're doing right now. I'm going to switch over to Kali. So let me go over to Kali, and let me log into Kali, and I'm going to bring up Nmap. And just to see our various commands, first we're going to just say Nmap and then the IP of Server 2016. That's the normal T3 speed, normal speed, the 1,000 most popular ports. And while I'm doing this, we can watch how KF Sensor, the IDS, responds. Do these kind of side by side. Nmap 192.168.75.16. Hit it. We expect KF Sensor to kind of light up because any port or any IDS worth anything is going to detect this port scan. Nmap completed its port scan. What it found that was interesting is it did these, and look at how Nmap sees all of these ports as being open. And when that happens, well, we'll discuss that a little bit more, but that's kind of funny. It's kind of suspicious. Anyway, coming over to KF Sensor, we can see that if you click Close TCP Ports here, click that, here are all the ports that are not open for business on Server 2016 that nonetheless Nmap tried to scan. And then you can see additional ones like the FTP and SSH and Telnet and DNS. So we can see ports that had activity. And even if we click ports that don't show up in pink here, click them, you'll still see that there was an attempt. And let me just, so I click this one for SMTP. Let me just double click it here. You can see here that KF Sensor specifies an event ID, and it says this is severity high. This was a SYN scan with a client reset. Obviously an Nmap attack S cap S, attack small s capital S, coming from 192.168.75.156, which is Kali's IP, coming from Kali's port, whatever this port is, against our SMTP TCP port 25. Look in the details and it tells you a little bit more. And this whole SYN scan with client reset, when Kali and most other SYN scanners do their thing, they send out a SYN packet, a TCP SYN, to the target, and the target responds back with SYN ACK. And rather than completing the handshake with an ACK, they send a reset, saying, just kidding. And that's kind of suspicious when you have that happen. That looks like an Nmap SYN scan, and which is exactly what happened. So we can see that as we click through these, the ports where there was some kind of scan activity will show up here. And when we click through them, we can see whether or not, well, that one wasn't scanned, but we can see others that were scanned. So we can see that this thing, that KF Sensor discovered this. Now, in order to kind of clear the view, there are two things we need to do. One is to clear the log, and the other is to hide from the sensor, hide what the sensor is currently storing, hide it from our view to kind of refresh our view. What we're going to do is we're going to come out in Server 2016. We're going to go to the File Explorer here, click the File Explorer. And KF Sensor, if you were paying attention, installed itself in right here, just in the C drive where its log file is when you open this up. And you can see that the logs are here. So we're in C, KF Sensor logs. These are the KF Sensor logs. We're just going to highlight and delete all of them. But there's still stuff that's cached in the sensor, so we need to hide that stuff as well. We're going to come over here and we're going to go to View, and we're going to hide events, and we're going to hide all events, and then we need to restart the service. So we're going to come over to File, and we're going to go to Service, Restart Server. And give that just a moment. Okay, so now we don't have anything to see, and we're ready to start fresh. There's a little refresh button here. If you click it, it doesn't show anything. If we didn't do those things, if you just simply hid and you refreshed, it would probably just pull that stuff from the sensor's memory. But we're ready to start fresh again. Let's go over to Kali, and according to what we're going to do, we're now going to do a TCP full connect scan. Because maybe if we complete the three-way handshake, the sensor will think, oh, that's normal. Okay, let's try that. We're going to, now one thing I really love about VMware is that it has a shared clipboard, even between Windows and server and Kali. I'm going to change this to Windows IP address, and I'm just going to copy paste 192.168.75.16, and let me just highlight, right click copy, and I'm going to come over to Kali now, and I'm going to paste that in the terminal of Kali. So this was the results of our scan here. And I'm just going to now right click and paste. Now I'm doing a full TCP connect scan. It's still at normal speed. It's still doing the 1,000 most popular ports. Hit enter, and let's see what happens. And right off the bat, I can see that, yep, some of this stuff, like this FTP, because this was a honeypot, yeah, that turned up. We did a full three-way handshake with the ports that are normally open for business, so they didn't think anything of it. But some of these others that are not truly open for business, that the honeypot had open, yeah, it found that. And when I go to close TCP ports, I can see that there's all sorts of stuff that was discovered here. Okay, fine. Let's clear the log. Let's hide events. Let's reset the server. And let's try it again. So I'm going to come over here. I'm clearing the logs. Clear the KF sensor logs. I'm going to come over and view, and I'm going to hide all the events right now, and I'm going to restart the service. File, service, restart server. Okay. Give it a moment, and it'll be ready. Now, let's try our next thing. Let's now try to fragment. So I'm going to put in the IP of server 2016 here. Let me try to fragment. Right-click, copy. What we're going to do is we're going to fragment it down to an MTU size of just 32 bytes. Maybe fragments will slip under the radar. You notice we didn't set a timing value. Or rather, we have the normal timing value, which we know shows up anyway. So we didn't go slow timing or anything like that. Let's see if just fragmenting pulls it off. And we're doing a SYN scan. We're not even going to try to do a three-way handshake and not a full handshake. So let's go over to Kali. Let me right-click and paste. I am going to do a SYN scan with verbose output. I'm going to fragment down to 32 bytes at a normal speed. Let's try it. Let me just minimize this so it's out of the way. Let's see if fragmentation works. It will, of course, take longer. All right, some stuff we're fragmenting. Well, looks like fragmentation didn't work at all with this particular IDS. Okay, fine. Let's clear out and let's start again. Let me just clear the logs. Let me go and view, hide the events, and restart the service again. Service, restart. So we're starting fresh again. Takes only a moment. All right, next thing we're going to try. Now we're going to try to go at the slowest possible speed. And like I said, because it will take 2 minutes just to do four ports, we're only going to do 4 select ports, including a port that we know is not used, port 22. And to try to sort of alleviate any suspicion, we're going to try a three-way handshake. So it looks like normal activity. I'm going to try that. We'll see what the IDS thinks of this. I'm just going to copy paste. So I'm just going to put in server 2016 IP here. Right click, copy. And I'm going to come over to Kali and I'm going to try it. Okay, let me right click and paste. TCP Connect scan, slowest speed, only 4 ports. Here we go. It will take a couple of minutes. So I'm going to stop the video and I'm going to come back as soon as this is done. As you're doing this, expect this to take about 2 minutes or so, depending upon how fast your host laptop is. Okay, we scanned the 4 ports. They all show as open. When we come over to KF Sensor, we can see that, yeah, FTP and SSH do show activity. According to Kali, come back over to Kali here, we also scanned 80 and 445. If we come over here, first of all, so we see 80 and we see 445. Now, again, like I said, they're crossed out because the server is running those ports anyway. But let's see what this thing thinks. Let's start with FTP. Let's double click it, or let's click it, and there is activity here. Let's open it up. And it shows that it thinks severity high. There was a connection here, an FTP connection. And let's look at the signature here. And let's go to the summary and let's go to the details. Now, the only thing is it does not recognize this as a scan. It recognizes this as an attempted connection. And it says severity high because this thing is not running, server is not really running FTP. So why did we attempt an FTP connection? So we're thinking potential hacker activity high. Did not recognize it as a scan though. Come over to SSH again, and we can see that there's activity SSH, double click, open it. Severity medium, which is interesting. It was a full connection like the other one. does not recognize it as a scan because it's a full connect. Why they say medium is interesting, because when they said FTP was high, I'm not sure why they made the distinction there. But it does not recognize it as a scan. It does recognize it as activity, but you could have normal activity as well. Okay, when we come over to 80, because according to Kali, we also scanned 80 and 445 according to Kali, according to what we did. Let's come over to 80. Let's double click it, and it did not recognize anything odd. It thought it was just normal activity. And 445 did not recognize anything odd. So we were able to fly below the radar of certain things, which tells us then that, now of course on the Nmap side, we don't know for a fact yet which ports are true and which ones are not. We would have to go a little bit farther and actually do a real interactive connection. But we can see that two of our ports did not register. Two of our port scans did not register because we were going slowly. The only reason why these were caught is that they're a little unusual. So our port scan at slow speed was partly successful. Let's clear the logs again, and let's hide the events, view and hide events and all events, and let's restart this service. And let's service restart. And let's try it one more time, and let's just pick up the pace slightly. Let's go to, well, let me just clear these again. Just make sure, maybe we should clear the logs after we restart the service. Okay, let's go back to Nmap and Kali, and let's minimize this so we don't have to look at it. And let's try a timing 2 scan rather than the timing 1, which is the slowest. So timing 2. And of course, full TCP connect, hit it. It'll go faster, and it's done. Shows them as open, and KF sensor did indeed show activity. So here's the FTP. We open it up, shows a connection. It thinks it's high severity. Does not recognize it as some kind of scan though. Just shows it as a connection. SSH, there's activity. Open it up. Does not recognize it as a scan. Flags it as a medium severity. And 80 does not recognize anything untoward. And 445 does not recognize anything untoward. We can try one more thing, because we've been doing full connect scans. Wonder if we could get away with this with just a SYN scan, if the IDS would recognize that. We're just going to try one more thing here just for fun. I'm just going to come over here. I'm going to clear the logs, whatever logs there are. I'm going to hide the events of the most recent ones. Hide all events. I'm going to restart the service. And I'm just going to go out just for good measure and clear any new logs, because it keeps on creating new logs. I'm just really surprised it doesn't lock the logs. Okay, let's come over to Kali and let's do that same scan again, and as a SYN scan. In fact, let's do the slow one, the T1, as a TAC S cap S. You could leave this TAC small s capital S off, and it would still be the default, the SYN scan. If you are logged in as root on Kali, your default scan is a SYN scan. Let's just try that at slow speed with this TAC S cap S here, and let's just see what happens at slow speed, because we were doing full connects. Now we're just going to do a partial, just kidding, a scan, a SYN scan, a stealth scan. It's called stealth. Not really sure why they call it stealth, because you're not being stealthy at all by sending a reset. Not really sure about that. I'll come back in just a moment as soon as the scan is done. All right, that scan is done, and we can see that the SSH now says, that's maybe a little bit higher issue, higher severity. FTP was still found. Open it up, still severity high, and it went, aha, that was a SYN scan. I gotcha. And same with SSH, found it, open it up. Yep, that was a SYN scan. Okay, coming to 80, 80 went, this is a SYN scan, even at slow speed. And with 445, yeah, this was a SYN scan. So what we know then is, at least with this particular intrusion detection system, if we scroll back through the commands, whenever we did a SYN scan, that just set off our IDS no matter how slow we were. And if I go back through the commands here, when we did a full TCP connect scan, we were able to pull it off at least on ports that were open, truly open for business. We were able to do it both in T1 and T2 speeds. But fragmenting didn't work. At least on a SYN scan, fragmenting did not work. And a full TCP connect scan didn't work either. And a normal scan, just forget it, that we were totally caught. So that is how we can try to fly under the radar of an intrusion detection system.